Welcome back to Dark Naruto Empire. The story reaches a new turning point in Part 3. As the consequences of past choices continue to unfold, Naruto finds himself caught between powerful emotions, hidden secrets, and enemies who are beginning to uncover the truth. Every decision now has the power to reshape the future of the ninja world. Before we continue, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a new What If story. Comment below. Destiny unfolds, if you're excited for Part 3. Now, let's continue the adventure. Minato, Kushina, and Naruto stopped at a family diner to grab some breakfast before their flight. Minato was sitting alone sipping on some coffee as their waitress approached the table. The pretty young blonde began picking up the plates around the table. "Where are the other two?" the waitress asked. "They went to the bathroom. They will be right back. I'll take a check whenever you get a chance. We have a flight to catch." "A little family vacation?" the cute waitress asked as she put the plates on the tray. "Disneyland. It's going to be great. We haven't been down there in years." "Oh nice. I always wanted to go to Florida but my cheap loser boyfriend won't take me anywhere." "Really? Well, we all busted ours this year to make this happen. Plus, my son just graduated high school with honors and received a full scholarship to Dartmouth College. Going to play baseball." "Oh cool. I love baseball. You should meet Naruto before we go," Minato said with a smile. In the single unisex bathroom, Kushina had her black skin-tight leggings pulled down to the top of her full milky thighs. Her strong right hand was a blur over Naruto's hard fat nine. Kushina couldn't help but notice that her boy's meaty had definitely grown since they started their new taboo sexual relationship. She slowed her jacking hand a bit to feel the full length of her son's heavy member. Kushina leaned over and drooled a large string of spit over her hand to add a bit more lubrication. For the next 15 seconds she worked her spit into the shaft. She shifted her hand to his heavy nutsack and worked the extra watery saliva all around Naruto's sperm-filled balls. "Let mommy jerk a big healthy load out of your big stiff boner," she said softly to her son as he leaned against the bathroom wall. Naruto held his hips forward, which caused his obscenely protrude out from his body. "You are so perfect, mom. Every part of you. I am so hard," Naruto said as he grabbed handfuls of his mother big beautiful Kushina let her son play with her big round bottom. His fingers digging into her soft cheeks. "Yes, you are baby. I want to make sure your heavy balls are nice and empty for our long trip," Kushina responded. "Your looks so incredible in these leggings. I just needed to get my hands on it. I think sometimes my is too big," Kushina confessed while her son's with her fist a bit faster. "Mom, you are crazy. Not a minute goes by where I don't think about licking every square inch of your juicy butt. You naughty boy. Does the sight of mommy's curvy body make your creamy cum boil in your bloated nutsack?" The hot mom slowed her jerking motion to concentrate on the palming the sensitive head of her son's. "Gaawwwwd mom. I love your filthy mouth," Naruto said as he felt his mother's words shoot directly down his spine. "Here baby." With her left hand, Kushina lifted her cute baby blue tube top just over her large natural E-cup mommy tits. She had a bit of trouble lifting the tight top over her big swells of her chest. Then she positioned her sexy black bra underneath her milky breast, exposing her bright pink nipples. "Play with them while I jerk this monster off." Kushina Naruto's with her hand. Kushina knew they had to be quick. Any second someone could be knocking at the door, especially Naruto's father. Nevertheless, the hot mom wanted to play. Kushina bent Naruto's downward, gave it a few more whacks, and then completely let go off his pulsating. This caused Naruto's steel shaft to bounce straight up. Kushina looked down to watch it throbbing and bouncing on its own, jerking from Naruto's heart rate. Kushina's own heart began beating out of control as her body temperature suddenly shot through the roof. Her hands were soaked with pre-cum. Again, Kushina playfully bent Naruto's heart downward, let go, and watched it bounce up like a springboard again. The urge was completely overwhelming to make her baby boy cum his brains out. "That's so hot, honey. Mommy wants to eat at everything you have bubbling up in these heavy balls. Hurry up and be a good boy. I am going to get on my knees and stick out my tongue. Do you think you can blow a huge wad for me? Like they do in the dirty films you watch?" Kushina said quietly as she leaned close to Naruto. She began kissing the side of his face while her wet hand was going to town on his entire shaft. Naruto felt his heavy balls twitch as his mother confessed the fact that she wants to swallow his thick heavy load in the restaurant bathroom. Kushina slowly sank to her knees and let go of Naruto's. "Go ahead, sweetie. If I have such a filthy gutter mouth, why don't you jerk a thick load into it? Jack off on my tongue. Kushina said seductively with a lustful smile on her face. The beautiful mother slowly opened her mouth wide and stuck her tongue out as far as it would go. The edge of her long fat tongue stretching almost past her chin. Kushina knew Naruto had developed a strong fetish for her mouth and tongue. Naruto exhaled deeply as he marveled at the beauty kneeling before him. For about 30 seconds, Naruto jacked off his large purple headed with determination. All the while, his gorgeous loving mother sat perfectly still, mouth stretched open, and patiently waited. Naruto's swollen balls bounced around in front of Kushina's angelic face. Don't you want your mommy to eat all of your sperm? Kushina said, trying to stab the final dagger into Naruto's swollen nuts. Open up. Oh my gooddd. Wider mom. I'm gonna. Naruto silently moaned as he put the tip of his head past Kushina's plump ruby red lips. The warm dampness of his mother's breath triggered his nuts and made him explode. Fearful that jerking his hard and fast would get his cum everywhere, Naruto slowed his jerking hand and pointed the tip of his twitching member to keep his aim. Rivers of jizz spewed and shot out into Kushina's wide-open mouth. Never breaking eye contact, Kushina rubbed her son's thighs as a form of an encouragement. The feeling of exploding was so intense that Naruto quickly put a hand over his mouth to prevent himself from groaning loud for the whole restaurant to hear. After about 8 thick slimy shots, Naruto shook his to deposit the last drops onto his mother's beautiful tongue. The tilt of her head allowed for each load to slide back and gather in her inviting mouth. Kushina kept her mouth wide open as he finished, making sure he saw the large pool of cum build up as it collected. Naruto stepped back as Kushina began to gargle thick cloudy gathering. Afraid that some might spill out of her mouth and onto her clothes, she decided to stop, close her mouth, and get up. Kushina adjusted herself in the mirror and hoisted her tight leggings back up over her wide motherly hips. She gave Naruto a sexy little wink, checked if the coast was clear, and left the bathroom. Naruto leaned against the bathroom wall, trying to catch his breath as he stood straight up through the zip of his jeans. Minutes later, Minato, Kushina, and Naruto made their way to the car parked outside of the diner. Kushina got into the passenger seat as Naruto got into the back. Minato slipped into the driver's seat and immediately fumbled with his keys and dropped them on the ground. Shit, Minato said as he bent down to search for them. At that moment, Kushina shifted around in her seat and looked back at her 18-year-old son. Kushina stared into her only child's eyes and proceeded to open her mouth wide. Naruto noticed that her mouth was still full of his sticky white cum. She never swallowed. Naruto's eyes got huge and his twitched in response to his mother lewd act. Got them, Minato announced, and he began to rise up in his seat. Kushina closed her mouth and made an obvious swallowing action. There was so much thick jizz in her mouth that she struggled to swallow it all in one gulp and her face showed it. Let the vacation begin, Minato said gleefully as they drove off. Immediately upon arriving in Disney World, the family decided to stop for ice cream down Magic Kingdom's main street. A long line formed outside the 50s-style parlor shop that had been a popular spot for years. Minato, Kushina, and Naruto quickly got online and discussed what they were going to order. I have to use the bathroom. Can you order me? Minato said, looking around for the closest restroom. A vanilla cone with extra hot fudge. No problem, sweetie. Kushina finished Minato's sentence as if to imply that he was completely predictable. You know me too well. I'll be back, Minato said gleefully. Naruto was standing behind his mother while texting a few friends. All of a sudden, Kushina shot her back playfully into his crotch while he was nose-deep in his iPhone. Instinctively, Naruto grabbed her matronly wide hips and pressed himself against her ample backside. Not wanting to cause a scene, Kushina wiggled from Naruto's grip. Kushina knew it would be hard to keep her hands off him, especially while they were in the happiest place on earth. She began thinking to herself of the different ways she could get her darling son alone. Kushina had been very good at hiding their aggressive sexual relationship. It was getting harder to keep their feelings concealed as their mother-son bond was growing deeper and more perverted. The family found a shaded spot by Cinderella's castle to sit and eat their ice cream. Kushina couldn't keep her eyes off her chiseled, still growing young man. Since graduating, Naruto had been going to the gym where Kushina worked almost daily. He did a ton of strength conditioning to stay in tip-top shape for next spring's baseball schedule. Just last year, Naruto was considered a tall lanky kid, but now his body was taking on full shape. His arms, back, and abs were stronger than ever, and he made it a point to run several miles a week. His shoulders, legs, and chest all beefed up thanks to his hard workout routine and a mother who was willing to push him to achieve results. Kushina felt herself get flush again and her began to get moist, reminiscing about her birthday present to her son and events that followed that night. There were moments where she couldn't believe how horny her son made her. Flashbacks popped in her head of the different kinky things she did with her son while her husband was at work or running errands. Her face became flush and her panties became flooded as she vividly recalled back to a few days ago before their trip down to Florida. After a few moments, Kushina snapped back to reality. Ice cream began melting down her hand. She quickly lashed her tongue out and caught the running cream. Suddenly Naruto was getting heated inside as he watched his mother lick around the ice cream cone and scoop up the melting cream. The nastiest incestuous thoughts ran around in Naruto's perverted brain. He immediately thought of his graceful-looking mother dressed up as a naughty Belle from the Beauty and the Beast. Within seconds, quick imagines of Kushina dressed up like Jessica Rabbit and Helen Parr, the mother from The Incredibles, filled his brain. Naruto giggled to himself as the dirty thoughts came to him. Naruto's mind wandered to thoughts of his playful mommy from the top window of Cinderella's castle. He pictured himself nailing her from behind with her big flowing blue dress was hiked up around her waist. The glass-heeled slippers made her cute and beautiful feet mouth-watering. My son is my Prince Charming. Baby, are you going to knock up your queen? His Cinderella mommy asked innocently while looking back at him. The steady pounding was causing Kushina's hair to bounce in front of her face. Naruto got red-faced while daydreaming. He did his best to keep his growing erection at bay while imagining himself blowing a huge load into his mother. Naruto, Minato said loudly. Hello, let me take a picture of you and your mother in front of Walt Disney and Mickey Mouse. He said while aiming his camera toward his wife and son. Naruto quickly woke up from his dirty daydream and put one arm around his mother's shoulders. Kushina snuggled up close to her baby boy, put both arms around his waist, and rested her head on his broad chest. Minato took the picture and checked it to make sure it was in focus. He looked at the picture and immediately thought of the same picture they took while Naruto was 7 years old in the very same spot. Except, in the older picture, Naruto was the one hugging his mother around her beautiful waist and Kushina had arm draped over her son's shoulder. Back at the hotel room, Minato put his wallet and cell phone down and gathered some new clothes. Naruto sat on the bed watching TV and Kushina was putting on additional makeup for their dinner out at the Fort Wilderness Resort. We have dinner reservations in 45 minutes. I am going to grab a shower. Naruto, why don't you go to your room and get ready? He instructed as he walked into the bathroom and closed the door. Sitting in the chair in front of the large vanity, Kushina looked over to her son through the mirror. Naruto felt his mother staring at him and met her glance. He noticed she had a seriously angry look on her face while she applied some extra blush onto her rosy cheeks. Kushina slowly got up and slid off her tight blue jeans and walked over to the bed to her open luggage. She pulled out a black high-waist skirt and placed it on the bed. She glanced back at Naruto who was obviously lusting over her milky soft thighs. Kushina picked up the skirt and walked over to Naruto who was still sitting on the bed. She walked in between the two queen-size beds and stopped right next to her son. Naruto watched his perfect specimen of a mother walk toward him in her panties and yellow spaghetti strap top. Kushina decided to turn around so her full breathtaking was staring Naruto hard in the face. Again, Naruto recalled jerking off to the plump backside of the Spanish adult film star Francesca Jaimes. His nearly 40-year-old mother had a waistline and booty just like hers. Kushina proceeded to bend over slowly to put on the black skirt. Naruto's nearly ripped through the front of her shorts. Kushina was clearly teasing her baby boy. She finished putting on the skirt and casually walked over to the area next to the bathroom door. She turned around and leaned up against the built-in desk. Naruto looked at her with lust and desire as she began taking off her earrings. Then Kushina shifted her skirt high on her hips so the edge of the loose material finished only a few inches below her panty covered. After the hours and hours of dirty thoughts throughout the day, Naruto was ready to go at the drop of a hat. Kushina clearly loved getting her son all horned up. Kushina slowly removed her necklace as the two heard the shower begin to run in the bathroom. The sexy mother spread her milky legs slightly to give her son more of a view up her skirt. Next, she reached up into her hair and began loosening the clips holding her hair up. She shook her head and the hair fell around her shoulders. Naruto began to think for him and made him act. He quickly got up and walked over to his mother with determination. He fished out of his khakis shorts as his heart raced at the idea that he would get Tohi's gorgeous mother while his father was in the shower, a few feet away. He was stopped abruptly as Kushina put up her hand to his chest. Naruto's heart was obscenely pointing through his shorts at her. "What do you think you're doing?" Kushina asked, acting confused and annoyed. "Mom, I need to have you. That skirt. And these legs." Naruto stammered and dropped to his knees and began worshipping the front of her creamy white thighs. He pressed his nose to the front of her panties and ran his hands up the side of her luscious hips. "Naruto, this has to stop. Look at me." Kushina reached under Naruto's chin to make him look up. "You can't keep using my juicy cunt whenever and wherever you feel like it." Kushina whispered sternly and lightly slapped her son in the face. That did it. Naruto deeply exhaled, began licking and kissing her hips, inner parts of her legs, and the front of Kushina's panties. "I mean, you stare at my tits like they're a set of fun bags. Your eyes are constantly glued to my thighs," and the annoyed mother continued. At first, Naruto didn't know how to react to his mother's tone, but his lust-filled began thinking for him. He jumped to his feet and his perfect 9 sprung up and bounced around. "Naruto," Kushina gasped as he quickly started slapping his on her panty-covered mount and on the front of her skirt. "Please mom, my balls are hurting so much. If you don't let me do this, I'll need to go jerk off," Naruto said in desperation. Kushina slapped her son lightly across the face once again. "You should not jack your big girthy erections to your mother. I can't believe you have a fetish for jerking off to me. Do you picture me swallowing your heavy cum loads? You probably wanted to blast all over my ice cream cone and watch me lick it up earlier," she said in disgust. Naruto couldn't take it anymore. Without hesitation, Naruto ripped off Kushina's thin panties and slammed his into her steamy tight. Kushina moved up slightly so that the skirt could raise up further with no resistance. Not fazed by Naruto's roughness, she continued her dirty talk. "I see you staring at my plump cheeks all day. Constantly thinking about sticking your concrete hard into mommy's," Kushina said as she looked angrily into her son's horny eyes. Kushina gasped deeply as she felt every inch get jammed inside her. The two never broke eye contact as Kushina felt her son forcefully thrust his inside her. "See, this is what I mean. You have to control your urges. All you see of me is your dirty little whore," Kushina said while continuing to act angry. Naruto began pounding and slicing his into his mother's incredibly hard. They were practically nose to nose and breathing heavy. Under her shirt, Kushina's large tits were bouncing to the rhythm of Naruto's pounding. Still fully clothed and her skirt still hiked up around her waist, Kushina wrapped her legs around Naruto's strong waist. She then put her arms around Naruto's broad shoulders for leverage. "You probably imagined me bouncing hard on you while we were on that It's a Small World ride. Or blowing you on the Pirates of the Caribbean. What kind of mother would I be if you right after we rode Space Mountain?" Kushina hissed in his son's face while the desk started lightly hitting against the wall. Somehow Kushina maintained her commitment to role-playing as the pissed-off scolding mother. Her blood boiled inside. It took every part of her to not yell out in lust, throw her son on the bed, and his brains out. Instead, she was getting off driving Naruto insane by acting that she was turned off by his dirty behavior. She turned the dial up on her dirty talk as she was getting nailed hard by her manly son. "How about my face? Huh, don't you find it disgusting to want to empty yourself all the time all over your mother's face? Thrust, mommy's cheeks. Thrust, on my lips. Thrust, mommy's chin. Thrust, in my hair. Thrust, it's obscene and disgusting to treat me like your very own skanky porn star. Your personal incest doll," Kushina said with a furious tone as she grabbed her son tightly around the back of his neck, knowing that would turn her son onto another level. Holding on for dear life, Naruto lifted his mother up and threw her on the edge of the bed. He jumped between her legs once again and resumed high-salt. Kushina let out a deep groan as Naruto slammed his into her. Naruto kept his focus on his mother nasty dirty talking while he rammed his in from the tip to root. He pressed his body weight onto top of Kushina and began attacking her neck with his mouth. "What did you say, hun? Did you call me?" Minato yelled from the shower. "Oh, nothing, darling. It was the TV. Just yelling at this stupid show," Kushina yelled back. Neither her or her son was breaking their eye contact or stride. "God, you even love when I say that nasty word, don't you? I felt you get harder when I said the vile word," Kushina whispered, acting horrified. "Say it again," Naruto grunted. "That dirty forbidden word. Never," the hot mother replied back immediately. "Please, say it," Naruto whimpered and began to sweat from the savage he was giving his mother. Kushina paused a few seconds while burning a hole into his eyes with hers. She grabbed both sides of Naruto's face so he couldn't look away. Incest, she whispered. Naruto's expanded at the sound her voice. Her warm gushed a little to accommodate the rough beating she was getting. Baby, the bed, Kushina whispered to her son. Out of animalist lust, Naruto forced his mother onto her back in front of the bathroom door. He immediately re-entered his mother's warm wet cunt and continued slamming into her. Kushina hooked her hands under the back of her knees and spread her legs just wide enough to give Naruto easy access. You're a bad boy for having incest thoughts about your mother, Kushina whispered harshly. She was so turned on that she briefly thought about yelling at the top of her lungs. The trembling mother thought better of it and continued to whisper at her boy. Thrust, 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 thrust. Incest thoughts about using me as a filthy cum bucket. Pound, 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 pound. Incest feelings about mommy's wet twat. Thrust, 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 thrust. Naruto's thrusts got faster and faster as he reached to grab underneath the back of his mother's shoulders and used them to into her with harder slams. Kushina laid on the hotel floor and took everything Naruto's could give her. Disgusting incest thoughts about blowing large pent-up loads up my bubble butt. Naruto was in awe of his mother's nasty comments. His face got really red as he continued his hard pounding. Sensing Naruto was close to blowing, she didn't let up her dirty talk. The hard bouncing caused her beautiful blood-red hair to fall around her face, but she made no attempt to push it away. As if the only thing that mattered was to drive her son completely delirious. I suppose now you want to shoot your thick juice up my warm wet cum on. Show me what naughty sons do to their toy mommies. She hissed while trying not to show that she was on the verge of coming herself. She really knew how to dive deep into his most perverted parts of his psyche and get him to explode almost to a point of passing out. Her entire body started to violently convulse as the power of Naruto's hard deliberate thrusts pounded her into the floor. Naruto's body went into overdrive as Kushina wrapped her arms around his neck. Naruto's was pumping extremely fast as it began to spurt warm jizz into her. There you go, sweetie, let it all out. Bury it deep, Kushina said softly while bringing his head into her neck. She began giving her son soft kisses and licking on the side of his face. Just like that, she was able to switch from a dominant and stern goddess to a warm and caring mother. Naruto was literally panting and drooling into her soft, sweet-smelling neck. Forceful jets of jizz continued to shoot deep into Kushina's quivering cunt. Naruto stretched out and his body went stiff as Kushina felt herself get flooded. The feeling and pressure was so intense that she couldn't stop herself from squirting on her son's thick. She jerked her hips violently, which caused Naruto's to pop out. Naruto looked down to see his mother gush and squirt all over his legs and lower part of his stomach. Kushina reached down and quickly began fingering herself, which caused her wet gushing to spray everywhere. She put one hand over her mouth to muffle her screams. Jesus cchhrrriisstt, she screamed into her hand while breathing hard. Kushina's motherly body started to calm down as they heard the shower turn off in the bathroom. Naruto and Kushina looked towards the bathroom door, gave each other a quick kiss, and immediately got up to compose themselves as best they could. The front of Naruto's shirt and Kushina's skirt was completely soaked. Thinking quickly, Kushina grabbed the bottle of water that was on the counter and began dumping it on his shirt and all over her skirt. Minato walked out of the shower in nothing but a towel. Naruto, you got water all over me. Shit, I'm sorry mom. Let me go change, Naruto said as he ran out of the room. Hey, watch your mouth, young man. Hurry and get ready, we are going to be late, Minato said as he stared at his son leaving the room. Let me get into the bathroom. I'll be out in a sec, Kushina said as she walked past her husband. Upon entering the steamy bathroom, Kushina quickly closed the door and locked it. She turned and put her back against the door and exhaled deeply. She reached underneath her skirt and scooped up the slimy liquid all around her. It was a mixture of her cum and her son's monster load. After slowly scooping some of the moisture in her right hand, she raised her fingers to her mouth and began tasting the mixture. The next 2 days, Naruto and Kushina acted like a typical mother and son. There were simple flirty looks and casual rubs, but that was it. Figuring this would be the last vacation they would be spending together for a while, Kushina, and Minato made the most of it. After a few days of running around, a nice relaxing day at the pool is just what I need, Kushina said while laying out on their patio. The Florida sun tanning her perfect skin. Minato and Naruto were packing their bags inside the hotel room. Well, it's still pretty early, so we should be able to get a good spot, Minato said happily. Kushina had on a white sultry crochet fringe kimono that covered up her white monokini. Her toenails were painted perfectly red and the heeled slippers made her legs look incredibly sexy. Kushina's perfect breasts were busting out of the deep V cut of her sexy outfit. The family made their way to the private pool that was exclusive to their hotel. Since they were staying at the vacation properties, there were no kids or massive amounts of people. The enormous outdoor pool was almost entirely empty. I can see our room from here, Naruto said while he put down the bags he was carrying. A few hours later, Naruto splashed his mother who was sitting on the steps of the pool. Stop it, Kushina said with a smirk on her face, but Naruto didn't listen and splashed her again. Kushina laughed and threw her body onto Naruto. The two wrestled and splashed each other for a few minutes. Naruto dove deep into the water and took out his mother's legs. When Naruto came up for air, Kushina playfully put her hands on his head and dunked him back underwater. The laughing and playing quickly morphed into flirty touching and groping. Kushina jumped onto of Naruto again, but this time he grabbed onto her. Pulling his mother into his body, Naruto spun around quickly in place. Instinctively, Kushina threw her arms around his broad shoulder tightly. He then picked her up over his head. Naruto, no, Kushina laughed uncontrollably as Naruto threw his mother into the water. You little shit, she said as she came up for air, splashing her son. Kushina looked her son's wet upper body. Since school and baseball ended, he was able to go to the gym where Kushina worked almost every day. Kushina and Naruto joined a CrossFit class and often worked out together. His arms were chiseled and his abs were rock hard. Her baby boy was a man. Did you guys put on sunscreen? Minato said from the lounge chair next to the pool. No, we should be good, Naruto responded. Now you should listen to your father. Don't you give mommy your creamy lotion? Kushina whispered to her son. Naruto looked back at his mother. I think I left it upstairs. Naruto and I will go grab it. It's best we get out of the sun for a bit anyways. Kushina said slowly, making her way out of the pool. Well, we have an umbrella, Minato said while he picked up his iPad. I'll refill the waters while we are up there. We'll be right back. Do you want anything else? Can you grab me a bag of chips? Minato asked while checking his emails. Sure sweetie, Kushina said as she put on her thin black and red kimono swimsuit cover-up. Naruto grabbed the towel and followed Kushina out of the pool area. On the 12th floor of the resort hotel, a housekeeping lady passed their hotel room with a cart full of cleaning supplies. Loud grunting noises and banging came from the hotel room. Curiosity caused the cleaning lady to stop in front of the door 1224. She smiled and giggled embarrassingly as she recognized the sounds of coming from the room. The short Hispanic did a quick in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost and moved on. Inside the room, Kushina was on top of Naruto, riding him as hard and fast. Her chlorine-soaked wet hair, heavy tits, and wide bounced around as she slammed against him. She was completely butt-free of any jewelry or makeup. For the last 5 minutes, Kushina Naruto into the bed, using him to get off. Their wet bathing suits were piled up on the hotel floor. Her wet red ruby hair smacked Naruto in the face while her tits rubbed against his chest. They both smelled like pool chlorine and suntan lotion. The cheaply made queen-size bed squeaked and whined loud. Baby, mommy needs this huge right now. I am so horny, Kushina said as she grabbed the headboard and started riding Naruto harder. She used the springy bed to bounce her body harder and faster. Naruto slapped Kushina's big fleshy mommy butt hard before grabbing a handful of her round meaty cheeks. Her well-toned abs flexed as she grinded her hips. Her big natural danced around for Naruto's viewing pleasure when she leaned back and bounced on his lap. Kushina hard and rough until she exploded. She kissed her son deep on the mouth and began to shake. She moaned and cried as she pressed her mouth against Naruto's. Mommy is coming hard. Mommy's tits right now. Grab them. OOOOHHHMYYYGOOOODDDDD. Be rough with me, Kushina yelled as she grabbed her son's head and pushed it into her milky tits. The sensation of Naruto sucking hard onto his mother nipples and tit meat caused Kushina to pop hard. The bed shaking along with her seizing body. You are incredible, baby. Kushina waved her hand in front of her flush face while catching her breath. Even though Kushina was coming down from her orgasm, Naruto didn't let up from sucking his mother's big beautiful. He tenderly latched onto the most sensitive parts of her tits. Honey, keep doing that, just like when you were, Kushina said as she hovered over her son, letting her creamy tits hang down in Naruto's face. Come in Agon, Kushina announced as goosebumps covered her body. She tensed up and shook as Naruto's mouth gave Kushina a wicked aftershock. Naruto felt warm liquid gush down his large oversized balls. You like mommy's body creaming all over your lap. Kushina rolled off her son as she began to come down from another mind-blowing orgasm. She engulfed his into her mouth. Kushina licked and sucked on him for a minute, thoroughly cleaning off his entire groin area. She jumped off the bed and walked toward her suitcase. Naruto stared at her as she walked. Her plump globes jiggled as she strutted around. Like a puppy dog, Naruto got up, and his steel-hard erection stood straight out. Kushina instructed her hard son to sit on the couch. I brought a few of those naughty bikinis we were looking at on that website. I know I can never wear these in public, so I figured let's put them to good use right now. Sounds good, Naruto said as he drooled over his sexy mother's full-figured body. Still sitting, he leaned up and grabbed her by the hips and spun her towards him. He immediately started kissing and sucking on her full cheeks. He gave her a few playful bites on her hips which caused her to giggle a bit. Kushina backed off from her son's grip so that she could put on the small G-string bikini. Naruto's eyes were popping out of his head. Kushina began to put on the smallest, skimpiest red mesh bikini. It was something he only seen on porn stars and glamour models. She moved the string top in efforts to cover up her bright red erect nipples. Her natural E-tits shifted and spilled out from all angles. Kind of tiny huh? Kushina said as she shook her hips from side to side. Jesus Christ Mom, he said as he fisted his. She started to walk around the room giving Naruto a naughty show. The bathing suit left nothing to the imagination. She walked back in front of her son, turned around, and sat right on his lap. Naruto angled his back so it laid along the G-string thong. Kushina softly grinded and bounced hair in his hem. I could look at you in these thongs all day, Naruto said as his mouth began to water. I don't want you to just look baby, Kushina said while getting up off Naruto's lap. She arched her back and pointed her at him. She reached back and grabbed each cheek and spread as much as she could. Naruto got an eyeful of Kushina's thong as it barely covered up her clam and juicy ole. Honey, is this too obscene? Look, my lips keep poking out of the sides. Kushina slid down onto her knees in front of her son. She grabbed Naruto's erection and slowly ran her tongue along the sides several times. Then purred slightly as she kissed the big head of his. Kushina spent the next few minutes worshipping Naruto's hard. She went from playfully slapping the underside all around her face, to gagging on the length, to tonguing the crown of the head lovingly. Where are those two? Minato asked himself as he picked up his phone. He began texting Naruto. Naruto heard his phone go off. He realized it could be his father but his phone was in the other side of the room. He looked down and watched his exquisite mother giving him one of the best blowjobs of his life. Kushina's head was flying up and down the full length of Naruto's large. She was on her hands and knees so that just her head was quickly bobbing up and down in his lap. Mom, that's probably Dad. Naruto shuddered from the intense blowjob. Kushina popped her mouth of his large wet and attacked his heavy nuts with her tongue. She mushed her face into his full balls which caused her entire face to become slick with saliva. You should go answer it. He's probably wondering where we are. Text him back that Mom is trying to suck every ounce of cum out your balls. Kushina said as she sucked him deep down her wet throat one more time. Minato heard his phone go off. He grabbed it and read the message. Mom wanted to take a nap. I'll be down soon. Minato read out loud. The happy father texted back that there were a few good-looking girls down by the pool and he should come down. He put down the phone and decided to go back to sleep. Okay, hurry back. There are a few good-looking girls down here that are your age. Naruto stopped reading the text out loud and focused his attention back to his loving mother. Kushina was now wearing a black micro-sling bikini. The bottom was hooked over her left butt cheek and she was bouncing hard on Naruto. You like mommy your brains out while dressed in her naughty bikinis. Yeah, so good. Naruto grunted loudly. Naruto was leaning back on the couch with his legs wide apart. Kushina had her back to her son, knees together, and her waist arched way out. She repeatedly slammed her wide up and down on Naruto's lap. Her hair and her tits bounced in rhythm to fast. After a few minutes of rough bouncing, Kushina popped off her son's girthy. Naruto snapped back against his stomach. She walked over to the bed, kept her feet planted on the floor, arched her really high, and laid her stomach onto the large plush bed. Baby, line up your meaty against my ole. I need to feel you in my. Grab the oil on the table and finish up my butt baby, Kushina said in the most seductive tone while spreading her large butt cheeks wide open. Naruto's mouth watered as he stared at his mom's moist holes. Naruto held her cheeks wide open and sank his large deep into her hole. She let out a satisfying moan and a primal grunt as he worked his all the way down to the root. Once he bottomed out on his slick, she softly swung her hips right and left. This caused both mother and son to exhale deeply. Naruto grabbed his mother's luscious hips and guided her slow pumping. "You're so hard," she cried in absolute ecstasy. Naruto continued to watch his mother's bouncing ripple as he beat down on her beautiful rear end. I'm going to come so goddamn hard again," she said as she leaned all the way forward. She increased her and now her was almost a blur. Naruto grinded his teeth as her title squeezed his extremely hard. Reaching behind his head and grabbing the couch, he let his mother the shit out of him. He was surprised that she was taking his 9 inches so hard. "Sweetie, you feel so big, oh my god. Grab my hips. Cummmmmmmminngggguggodd," Kushina screamed and she quickly sat straight up. Naruto reached around and grabbed onto her big bouncing tits. She then sat still, stopped moaning, shut her eyes extremely tight, and began to convulse. As another orgasm ripped through her body, she whipped her hips back and forth onto Naruto's steel hard. The couch shook along with Kushina's body. She began tearing up. She leaned back against his chest as her son kept mauling and pawing at her large tits. "Mom, that was amazing. I love making you pop like that. I can feel that I am going blow my wad soon," Naruto said with an aggressive panic in his voice. He spread her cheeks and shot a good amount of oil into between her glorious globes. With his hands, he rubbed the oil all over her hips, hamstrings, and lower back. "Do it, Pookie," Kushina said with a hint of desperation in her voice. "Mom, you're really going to let me come up here? It's definitely going to be a lot," Naruto asked as he resumed sawing in and out of his mother's big bubbly butt. "Anything you want, baby. Mommy's body is all yours," Kushina said lovingly. "Gooddddmomm. Say that again. I love when you talk like a filthy, hungry whore." Naruto pelvis bounced up and down on Kushina's plump bottom. "You want it hard, Mom," Naruto said with confidence as he laid onto his mother's back. The strong, dominant son hooked his arms under his mother's shoulders and used the leverage to slam his body hard against her. The white shiny flesh on Kushina's sexy hips bounced and jiggled. "Ruin me, baby. Ah," Kushina yelled. Pound mommy's fat butt and shoot that slimy semen as deep as you can," Kushina said as if to challenge Naruto. Pound. Do what your mother tells you to do." Kushina let the nasty words fly and wanted nothing more than to make her big son cum his brains out. Naruto lost control as he drilled away at her lovely bottom. Suddenly all sounds went silent and his sight went white, as his orgasm built up to a point of no return. Instinctively, Naruto grabbed his mother's luscious curvy hips and aimed to the biggest load into his mother's mature body. Through squinting eyes, he looked down and gawked at his mother's cheeks rippling as his pelvis roughly met Kushina's full rump. Kushina said as she looked over her shoulder and stared at her big beautiful boy having his way with her. She turned back around and did her best to not yell at the top of lungs. The sensation was so intense that Naruto collapsed down on his mother back. But his never slowed down. He began kissing the back of Kushina's neck while grinding his as deep as he can into his mother bubble butt. Kushina's body began to violently shake again as another orgasm snuck up on her and exploded. She grabbed a pillow next to her and yelled into it. The power of his hard thrusts the bed to slam repeatedly against the wall. The horny mother and son could only grunt and breath heavily as they each other as hard as they could. Kushina could tell by Naruto's breathing and rapid that he was about to blow. She turned around again and looked innocently into his eyes again. Naruto completely lost it and began shooting ropes of heavily cum loads into his mother's beautiful ass. He laid his head on the back of her shoulder and felt all his built-up stress jet out of him and into her. Naruto began seeing stars as he shut his eyes tightly, allowing the intense feeling to take over his entire body. Kushina felt her son's milky sperm fill her to capacity. OMMMYYYYGGGGOOOODDDDDD, Kushina buried her head into the pillow again and yelled. Naruto finished emptying himself into his mother's beautiful sweet butt. His legs instantly turned to jello as his body continued shaking. His breathing began to slow down as he slowly dislodged his deflating. Rivers of Naruto's semen began pouring out of his mother's perfect, forbidden hole. It quickly ran down her moist cunt, the back of her legs, and the edge of the bed. Naruto leaned in and started kissing the back of her sweaty back and cheeks. He gave it a playful bite and stood up. Oh my baby, that was intense. Get cleaned up so we can head back down before your father begins to get suspicious. Kushina said, trying to catch her breath. The Disney vacation came quickly to an end. Kushina and Naruto engaged in some hot and spontaneous quickies over the next few weeks after getting home. A few days after getting back from vacation, Minato and Kushina decided to get back into tennis. It's been a few years since they played with their friends at the country club, but they wanted to get back into more hobbies together as a couple. Minato and his radiant wife were in the kitchen, getting ready to meet up with the Wrights. They each bought new Nike tennis-specific outfits and gear. Kushina wore a really short white ruffed skirt. The color of the athletic but sexy skirt made her legs shine and glow. She had on a pink sleeveless tennis polo. Capping out her outfit, she had on a bright white flat tennis shoes and cute visor to keep her glowing hair out of her face. Kushina, that skirt is really short. Looks great but it's a little revealing. Minato said as he gathered his keys and wallet. It's okay, I got bloomers underneath. Don't you want to show me off? Kushina said as she flirted with her husband. She confidently flipped her skirt up to show him her pretty white bloomers. I have bloomers on so nobody can see the goods. Naruto walked into the kitchen right as Kushina dropped the front of her skirt. Sorry about that, Naruto, Kushina said and pretended to apologize. Yeah, Kushina, no son wants to see his mother's underwear. Minato laughed. Shit, my purse is in the bedroom. Kushina said, the Wrights are waiting for us. Hurry, we are going to be late for our match. Remember, we have a small practice beforehand. Minato said, slightly annoyed. Okay, wait for me in the car. Kushina said and gave Minato a quick kiss on his cheek. Minato walked out of the kitchen door that led out into the driveway. He loaded up the tennis rackets and sport bags into the trunk. He loaded up the cooler with waters and Gatorade. Minato got into the car, looked at his watch, and then glanced toward the house just as his phone vibrated. It was a text message from Karen and it said, have to use the bathroom. Be out in a minute. Minato exhaled loudly and began texting his buddy Mark and his wife that they were running a few minutes behind. Meanwhile, back in the kitchen. Hurry darling, use mommy's cunt, Kushina said softly while looking up at her son. Kushina laid on her back with her sexy legs spread wide while her son drilled her hard and fast on the kitchen floor. Her sexy white bloomer panties were dangling from Kushina's right ankle. The white pleated tennis skirt was flipped up onto Kushina's toned waist, giving Naruto full access to her tight warm twat. I'll be really quick if you keep talking dirty, mom. Naruto's voice shook as he desperately into his beautiful mother. Just concentrate on how good my feels gripping your mammoth. Naruto gulped and faster. His baggy cargo pants were pulled down just under his muscular. He propped himself up with his strong arms and his hands were planted just to the side of his mother's shoulders. Kushina felt Naruto's large nutsack slapping rapidly against her. I guess that nasty sloppy blowjob I gave you earlier today didn't completely quite do the trick. Want to give mommy the rest of that sticky stuff in those big balls? Your big tits look so good in this top, Naruto said as his voice shook from the hard pounding he was giving his mother. Baby, Kushina looked up at her strong manly son with wide puppy dog eyes. Yeah mom, Naruto's voice was shaking as he pumped his mother in her Nike outfit. Quote. Mommy wants to feel you dump your sperm. Son, please, be a good boy and shoot it deep in me, Kushina said innocently. Mama, I am coming hard up your perfect TTT ugg, Naruto grunted as he laid flat onto of his mother's clothed body. He put his arm under the back of her neck, put his forehead against Kushina's, and let everything in his testicles explode out. Ooh god wwwddd I feel you shooting Pookie. I feel it, pound everything into me, get it all in, deep as you can, Kushina cried loudly while running her hands through Naruto's thick blonde hair. Naruto grunted loudly with each hard shot he sent into his mother's body. Kushina frantically kissed her orgasming son all over his tense face. A few minutes later, Kushina came running out of the side door and out towards the car. With a little extra bounce in her step, Kushina jumped into the passenger's side door of the large SUV. She leaned in and gave her waiting husband a kiss on the cheek as they drove away. 3 days later, Mom, Naruto gasped looking down at the scene between his legs. Kushina wore a pair of blue hip hugger jeans and a tight button-down plaid short-sleeved shirt that came down to just above her belly. On her head, she wore a baby blue Mets baseball hat with her hair in a ponytail sticking out the adjustable open in the back of the cap. She had the light top unbuttoned and wide open. She knelt between her son's long muscular legs as he sat on the love seat in the newly finished family room. Wearing a purple lace bra that cups her luscious tits perfectly, Kushina tucked Naruto's long 9 inches in the underwire of the sexy bra. This helped Naruto stay lodged securely between her massive globes as the big engorged head stuck out obscenely through the top of her deep cleavage. The magnificent mother applied a heavy amount of baby oil to her big tits and Naruto's girthy phallus. Though the arousing bra was completely drenched in the oil, Kushina kept spitting and drooling on her chest to add to the lubrication. Kushina quickly bounced her chest up and down, jacking her sons with her tits and bra. Kushina said as she continued to bounce her milky tits encased her sexy bra up and down. Is my bigger than dad's? Naruto asked and swallowed hard. Why, does knowing you are about 3 to 4 inches bigger than your own father turn you on? Kushina asked while slightly quickening pace. Sweetie, let's go to the bedroom. I don't want you to come just yet. Mommy wants to show you a few things she bought today. Kushina said softly as she dislodged her son's big meaty from underneath the wiring of her bra. The kinky mom spent the next 15 minutes modeling various pairs of panties, bras, and negligee for her boy. Naruto allowed his mother to tie his hands against the bedposts. When she was ready to put another pair of panties, she slowly slid them off, and threw at Naruto's face. Eventually the large soft bed was covered with different transparent thongs, flimsy negligee, and low-cut sheer bras. Next, Kushina chose to put on a purple crotchless mesh teddy. It hugged every curve of the 38-year-old mother perfectly. Naruto's jaw dropped and his began leaking copious amounts of pre-cum. Kushina knew that all this teasing and edging would lead to her son having a large and satisfying cum. But Karen was getting extremely horny herself and she was just as much of animal as he was when she gets turned on. Kushina hoped on the bed as Naruto watched her big E-cup tits jiggle inside of the tight-fitting teddy. Naruto laid there as his pulsated and jumped with his rapiding heartbeat. With her small right hand, Kushina swooped Naruto's so it pointed straight up. With her left hand, she picked up several pairs of panties and piled them up at the base. She began jerking her sons off with her naughty thongs. This went on for several minutes as Naruto's pre-cum drenched her G-strings in her jerking hand. Naruto's throbbing stuck out toward Kushina's face. Kushina got close and draped a pair of yellow bikini-cut panties on the shaft and used her hands to jerk the head of his sensitive ballooning head. Naruto's abs flexed as his breathing began more erratic. She sensed that her son was about to blow and then suddenly stopped jerking. Kushina watched in awe as Naruto's twitch up and down. "Moom, please keep going," Naruto said clearly in agony. Kushina grabbed Naruto's once again and began jerking it faster than before. Her wet hand was a blur as she pointed it towards her angelic face. She moved her flowing red ruby hair that fell in front of her sexy purple eyes and concentrated on beating off her son. Naruto began pumping his hips to meet her fast hard strokes. Kushina saw her baby boy's nutsack twitch upwards and knew he was close again. She sped up her fist and looked up into her son's eyes. Suddenly Kushina stopped again. Her baby boy's big jumped up and down again. She was clearing and purposely edging Naruto for her own sexual enjoyment. There was a pair of low-cotton boy-cut briefs next to Naruto's head. She reached up, grabbed the pair, and stuck them into Naruto's mouth. Kushina's huge tits were nearly spilling out of the lingerie. "Keep them there. I can't take it anymore. I need to fill this huge thing inside of me," Kushina said suddenly with a bit of aggression in her voice. Still in her see-through purple mesh teddy, Kushina mounted Naruto and slid his wet throbbing into her warm cunt. She immediately began him really hard. "Jesus, you feel amazing. You like mommy parading around in short nighties and tiny thongs," Kushina grunted loudly. The large bed in the center of the room was shaking and slamming around. All the undergarments that laid around Kushina and Naruto were bouncing around while they used each other. Kushina knew she could be as loud as she wanted. "Your mommy's stick right now. I have such a fetish for your stiff boner," Kushina said sternly while completely molesting her son's body. Naruto shut his eyes tightly. Next, Kushina placed both feet down on either side and slammed her entire body weight down onto Naruto's steel. Kushina's creaming cunt exploded hard. She dove into Naruto's strong neck and whimpering loudly into it while her hips did all the work. After calming down a bit, Kushina got off her son's lap. His drench slapped hard against his stomach. She reached into the top drawer next to bed and pulled out a condom. After ripping the package open, she carefully put and rolled the latex glove over the large head. Kushina laughed to herself a bit after unrolling the condom and it only came down halfway down her son's thick shaft. The condom was Minato's stash, so that explains why it was so small on Naruto's member. Naruto stayed still as Kushina began to beat him off with the rubbery covering on. Kushina laid close to Naruto's body and purposely placed her bulging cleavage inches away from his face. The meat flesh of her tits rippled and giggled as Kushina jacked her sons. After a few minutes, Naruto moaned into the boy-cut briefs that was still in his mouth. His toad curled and he exploded hard into the tight-fitting condom. The end of the condom ballooned out with milky contents that a second ago was boiling in his balls. Instinctively, Kushina lounged her massive cleavage into Naruto's face right as she seen him coming. This caused Naruto to shoot a few more ropes into the small enclosure. Wow, that's a lot of creamy cum baby. Without saying another word, Kushina slowly slid the condom off her baby boy's deflating. She made sure that not a drop was spilled as she held up the used bag. Naruto looked at his mother with wide eyes as his perfect mother hovered the opening to the condom over her head. She dramatically flipped the condom and opened her mouth wide. The gooey contents dumped out and landed right into Kushina's open mouth. She made sure she got all the cum out of the condom, then proceeded to gargle her thick pasty liquid. She gargled a bit too hard and some of the bubbling cum escaped her lips. She giggled a bit and used her finger to scoop the runaway load back into her warm mouth. It took 2 solid gulps to get the entire load down her gullet. After Kushina swallowed all of Naruto's nut juice, she leaned in so she's mouth was inches away from his glazed-over eyes. She opened her mouth extremely wide and stuck out her tongue as far as it would go. Naruto could clearly see nothing was left. Next, Kushina noticed a few sweat drop around Naruto's forehead and neck. She leaned in and started licking her son's face and the base of his neck. It was about 3 in the afternoon and Kushina was in the kitchen talking with one of her friends on her hands-free headset. You don't say. Kushina laughed loudly, talking to her friend Michelle. Kushina sat on the kitchen counter and had on one of her all-red summer dresses. She had both feet spread out and placed to the side. Her thin dress was bunched up around her waist and her black underwear were pulled down around her knees. The silky sexy panties were being stretched wide as she spread her legs. Naruto was kneeling between his mother's outstretched legs while she carried on her conversation on the phone. Oh, nothing. I am just putting away stuff I got from the supermarket. So are you going to call him back? Naruto quickly licked and sucked away at Kushina's sweet. He used his hands and fingers to compliment Hisult on Kushina's. Kushina grabbed at her tits through her thin dress and began breathing heavily. She looked down at her son and saw her sticky juices all over Naruto's mouth and cheeks. So we got to catch. Oh my god, Kushina screamed and shook out as Naruto hit a spot that made her explode. No sorry, just Naruto came in and scared me. Kushina lied while trying to regain her composure. All the while, Naruto had his out and was jerking off at a feverish pace. Naruto stood up straight and took a few steps back. His fist flew up and down the full length of the head of his head and his face were beet red. Mom, I gotta, Naruto whispered while visually ready to pop off. Kushina quickly hopped to her feet and pulled up her panties over her luscious hips and. What did you say to Mike when he said that? Kushina asked Michelle as she hiked up her dress back over hips. Kushina stuck her panty-covered butt towards her son and bent over the kitchen counter. Really, I can't believe he said that to you, Kushina said, ignoring her horny son. Naruto grabbed Kushina's meaty cheeks and curvy hips with his left hand, while beating off with his right. He lustfully ran his fingers along the hem of the pretty black silk panties. For about 3 to 4 minutes, Naruto drooled over his mother's big backside. Then Naruto stepped forward and pressed his large up against his mother's crack through the full back underwear. Immediately he started dry humping her roughly. He grabbed Kushina's hips and roughly pulled her against his groin. Kushina arched hair to meet Naruto's pumping. The thin fabric of her panties was bunching up inside the deep valley of her round butt. Well girl, if Minato ever said something like that to me, I'd kick him in the balls, Kushina said as she grabbed the kitchen counter to maintain her balance. All of a sudden, Naruto doubled the pace of his dry humping and shot off extremely large wads of cum all over Kushina's black panties. Naruto almost passed out from the sensation as his exploded. He grabbed his spurting and aimed at different areas of the underwear. Moments later, Naruto stepped back and looked at the mess he made on his beautiful mother. Globs of white chunky jizz soaked the entire back of the black underwear. The kinky mother got up, let her dress flow back into place, and walked out of the kitchen. Naruto's tried calming down by controlling his breathing, but his heart was racing a mile a minute. Naruto went upstairs to grab a quick shower and get ready to out and meet some friends. It was about 9 p.m. later that day when Naruto decided to come home a bit early from his friend's house. "Hey girl, what are you up to tonight?" Now Kushina was talking to her other girlfriend, Josephine, another hot mom from down the street. Kushina walked into the dining room around nonchalantly and walked past Naruto. Kushina was wearing a tight pink ribbed t-shirt and her hair was being held up with a few pins. She grabbed a few envelopes and began flipping through them. Naruto immediately noticed his mother wasn't wearing a bra, nor was she wearing any pants. Her right mommy nipples looked like they were going to poke right through the cotton material. The ribbed t-shirt hugged her large sexy natural tits so tight, he could see the beautiful globes ripple and bounce up and down as she walked around. "Well, why don't you come over later on? I am just going to be hanging out. I picked up a bottle of wine." Kushina said. She started to walk away. Naruto looked down to take a look at his mother's bubbly as she walked away. His jaw dropped when he realized she was still wearing the same silky black panties from a few hours earlier. Still completely ruined, the dried-up long semen streaks went from the bottom of the full-cut panties to the top of the elastic band. His gut rock hard immediately and he began rubbing his through the outside of his jeans. The nasty thought of his mother not changing out of the ruined underwear got Naruto going instantly. He followed and watched Kushina walk around the kitchen while she purposely didn't pay any attention to him. "Yeah, that sounds like fun. I'm thinking just a girl night." "No guys, watch a few movies," Kushina said on the phone while strutting around the kitchen. Naruto looked at the clock in the kitchen and realized that he had to hurry or he was going to be really late. While still rubbing his through his jeans, Kushina walked over to the front door and put on a pair of her heeled slippers. She turned around and walked toward him. "Follow me," Kushina whispered to her son and slowly walked toward the living room. She took the iPhone out of the side of her panties and held it as they walked. Kushina led her tall handsome son into the living room and then proceeded to walk upstairs. One step at a time, Kushina swayed her hips and arched her out. Naruto's tongue hanging out and his body turned to mush, except for his meaty time seemed to slow down but the blood continued to rush to his throbbing. Kushina kept talking through the headset with Josephine as they reached the top of the stairs. She playfully swayed her hips seductively and made her way toward Naruto's room. "Well, I just have a class to instruct in the morning but nothing out of the norm." Kushina sat down on the floor and leaned her head back against the end of Naruto's bed. She looked up at him softly but stayed sort of disengaged so that she can focus on talking with her friend. "You should join. I'll get you a great rate for the sessions. Or if you do a monthly." Kushina continued to talk to Josephine about signing up at the gym she worked at. She placed her phone beside her on the floor, brushed the hair out of her face, crossed her nicely sculpted legs, and put her hands on her lap. Naruto masturbated his thick for the next few minutes as Kushina laughed and swapped stories on the phone with Josephine. A few times Naruto edged himself and settled back down. This way he wouldn't come too quickly. Every time he felt himself starting to blow, he would expertly let go off his or slow down. Kushina watched her boy's large nutsack quiver and bounce around and it made her body heat up and cream. "I know, Mike and Donald used to play Little League together. And now look at them. In a few months they are going to be playing at college together. Where did the time go?" Kushina said into the white Apple headset. Suddenly, Kushina reached up for Naruto's jerking right hand. She grabbed his hand, placed his hand palm up, and then let a large chunk of saliva pour out of her mouth into his palm. This caused Naruto to go wild. He resumed his violent whacking and whipped his now saliva-saturated hand up and down his steel hard. The veins in his neck and upper body muscles bulged out and he reached the point of no return. Naruto stepped forward and planted his feet on the sides of Kushina's hips. His heavy ball sack was inches away from her face as he towered over her. Not missing a beat, Naruto jerked off hard as he sized up his target. He angled his head toward the center of her lovely face and continued the efforts to shoot the biggest load possible. "Oh, I can't believe it either. Naruto has been getting so big lately. It seems like only yesterday, he was born and I would sing him to sleep. And now he's becoming a man right before my eyes. Treats me like a queen. Actually, it sounds like he's whipping up something for me to eat right now." Kushina said as she glowingly looked up at her son. She smiled beautifully, as she presented a lovely area for Naruto to masturbate onto. She raised her chin up high at her baby boy and continued to smile in anticipation. Naruto's legs shook and his cannon shot an extremely thick and heavy strand of cum right between his sexy mother's beautiful purple eyes. The force of the jet caused it to splatter a few inches around the bridge of her nose. The second thick delivery shot up and landed on the top left portion of her forehand with half of it sticking into her hair. The third blasted her on the right side of her cute nose. Kushina sat still and didn't move once from the impressively forceful shots from Naruto's nuts. You're right, with school and everything he does, he impresses me more and more. I am so proud of him, Kushina said to Josephine, still not breaking eye contact or flinching as Naruto ejaculated hard. The fourth sailed up over Kushina's right eye, painted more of her forehead. Naruto's fifth thick volley jerked out onto Kushina's lips and rested there. He aimed a bit higher so more of it would stick itself to her forehead and around her eyes. Smaller loads rained down on her over the rest of her face, mouth, chin, and neck. A lot of the final drops were dumped on Kushina's pink-ribbed shirt. Kushina was absolutely plastered all over her perfectly proportionate face. When he felt himself finish, Naruto dragged his fat head along her lips and flushed cheeks. She mouthed the words, "Oh my god," and giggled slightly at Naruto, trying to hold the conversation with her friend. Naruto stumbled back and smiled back at her. The sight of his awesome former model mother covered in his seed was so exciting to him. He's seen a few bukkake videos that focused on facials and Kushina's face looked like a bunch of guys had their way with it. The perversion of the scene in front of him caused Naruto to stay rather hard. Instinctively, Naruto reached down to his still stiff and resumed playing with himself gently. He thought that he was done, but the heat inside him didn't seem to go away. It is not every day you get to blow a huge creamy load all over your mother's face while she spoke to her girlfriend about how much of a perfect of a son you are. Kushina closed her eyes for a moment to absorb everything that just happened. Her already wet hole was flooding and noticeably staining in the thin crotch area of her panties. You don't have to bring anything, Kushina started to say as she opened her eyes. She looked over to Naruto and her boy's face turned from relief to determination. She realized he was gearing up to get one more out before his dad got home. Plus, between him dry humping her and relieving himself on her face, she needed a hard nasty. Josephine, sorry but I have to go. Naruto just came in. I'll see you a bit though. Love ya, Kushina said in a hurry. She hung up the call before turning back to look up at her shaking son. Some of the cum that he shot was now running down her cheeks, neck, and the side of her face. Gravity was taking over and made some of the cum run down and drip onto her pink cotton tank top. You naughty young man, Kushina got up rather eloquently and proceeded to take off her earbuds. Her big beautiful tits swayed and jiggled inside her clingy top. Baby, come here and get in bed with mommy. It's time to give me the proper hammering I deserve for being such a whore. Kushina said softly while burning with lust. Naruto reached down and aggressively took off the rest of his clothes. Kushina turned and quickly got on her back on the soft bed as she slid her soiled panties off. Do you see the mess you made? Honey, Kushina said as she was underneath Naruto, getting railed hard. I want to keep your cum on my face for when your dad comes home. I want to see his face when he realizes that I have cum in my hair and dripping from my nose. Would you like that? Then when he asked what's that on your face, I'll say, do you know that darling son of ours? Well, he took me upstairs and jerked his beefy while I was on the phone. Then he blasted the yummiest load of jizz all over my face. And when he realized he wasn't done with using me, hemi dirty twat until he was ready to blow again. That's right sweetie, I am incestuous our son. Naruto was way too determined to cum again to form a coherent sentence. Only primal grunting noises came from Naruto's mouth as he listened to his dirty mother talk like a filthy. I am in love with his huge boners. I live for making him. Oh god Naruto, you are me so hard. Take it, take what's yours honey yaha. Kushina yelled and thrashed around from Naruto's hard pounding. Naruto grabbed both of Kushina's long legs and hooked them over his broad shoulders. He flattened himself on top of her and resumed his rough. He wrapped his arms around Kushina's shoulders and hugged his mother tight. His mother, trying hard to pound her right through the mattress and box spring. Kushina continued to yell as her body exploded. Kushina whined out loud while Naruto continued to tow her brains out. Another orgasm quickly ripped through Kushina's body and caused her body to convulse. Naruto's lower body was a blur from so rapidly. The sight of his mother open mouth and seizuring body beneath him was way too much for him. Whatever cum streams that Kushina didn't scoop off with her fingers or panties, soaked into her beautiful skin. I am going to cum. Take it baby, my body is your RRRSSSSSSSS. Kushina screamed as she felt Naruto begin to empty whatever was left in his nuts. The next day, Minato was outside slowly skimming the pool for leaves. He had a pair of headphones on and was listening to his 80s hair metal band playlist. Kushina was showering in the upstairs bathroom. The window in the shower area looked out into the back lawn and pool area. "Mommy's butt is all yours," Kushina said in a monotone while looking outside of the open window. "Slam, slam, slam, mommy's face is all yours," Naruto's beautiful mother said in the same monotone voice. Slam 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 slam. Naruto stood behind his stunning mother and steadily pounded her from behind with hard deliberate thrusts. Their wet skin slapping against each other was almost drowned out by the heavily flowing shower. A few minutes earlier, Naruto walked in on Kushina while taking a hot steamy shower and explained how his dad was outside cleaning the pool. He shredded his clothes and jumped into the shower with his beautiful mother. "Mommy's mouth is all yours, baby," Kushina said robotically as she was on the receiving end of an extremely hard. Kushina had him drooling in seconds with her selective dirty talk. She decided to do some role-playing and act like a mindless robot with her hormone-driven son. She gripped the windowsill, arched her back, locked her knees together, and held her perfectly round back toward her 18-year-old boy. Naruto had a tight grip on Kushina's wide hips and used them to bounce her wet body on his steel rod. Naruto hunched over her backside and began to quicken his strokes as Kushina continued egging him on with her particularly nasty banter. The hot water rained down hard on the couple as they right underneath Minato's nose. "Mommy is just a submissive slave. A mindless screw toy. Yours to control. My only purpose is to make sure your balls are completely drained." Kushina went on speaking like an obscene robot. "You're so filthy. Yes. So you'll do whatever I want. You'll be whatever I want you to be." Naruto reached with his right hand and cupped his mother's right 34E tit. With his left hand, he grabbed handfuls of his mother's bubbly butt cheeks. He purposely controlled his breathing so he wouldn't come right away. "Whatever you want me to be, son." Kushina's eyes fluttered as a jolt of sexual heat flooded her body. She shivered from the deepest areas of her spine and gave a cute little whimper while hurgished. "Pump pump 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 pump." Slap. Naruto spanked Kushina hard on her left cheek. "Oh yes baby. Program me to be the filthiest perverted mommy in the world," Kushina said as she woke up from her own orgasm. "Your body belongs to me. My submissive jizz bucket," Naruto said, testing how far he could go with his dirty talk. "I'm a jizz bucket. I'm an incest jizz bucket. Screw me, come on me, and put me in your closet until you are ready to nut again. Dress me in the skimpiest clothes and have me parade around the house for your pleasure." She spat and she looked over her shoulder at her son with a lifeless look on her face. "God damn it." Naruto stopped his mother as he felt himself come. He closed his eyes and breathed. He quickly took his out and formed a tight grip on the shaft with his head. "What's the matter, son? We need to be quick. You need to release." Kushina still role-playing and looking back at him. After a moment, Naruto felt his orgasm subside. He slapped his mother perfect white plump cheeks with his 9. Kushina arched her butt out a little more. "Naruto, mommy is a jizz bucket. Screw me, come on me, and put me in your closet until you are ready to nut again. Dress me in the skimpiest clothes and have me parade around the house for your pleasure." Kushina repeated and braced herself. Naruto quickly rammed the entire length of his right back into his mother's furnace hot twat and picked up where he left off. Knowing he would only last a few more moments, he looked out the window as he saw his father testing the chemicals in the pool. "Tell me you want me to come on your big soft tits, mom. Please. You don't have to say please, son. Your doll mother is here to do anything for her lovingly baby boy." "Naruto, come," Kushina said in her perfect robotic voice. "Dirtier, my mommy servant. Say it again but dirtier. Don't hold back." Naruto reached around with his left hand and grabbed her mother's hanging left tit. He now had a tight grip on her large milky tits and he used them to pull her body back against his. "Son, I am nothing but a walking cum target for you. Designed to be a receptacle for your nasty sticky loads. Shoot your ball juice wherever your heart desires. Shoot your thick white seed all over my tits," Kushina said a bit louder but still in her robotic voice. She then moved her hands off of the window and placed them over Naruto's hands. Kushina stood straight but kept her arched while Naruto her like an animal from behind. Her bouncing body met Naruto's thrusts with equal force. Kushina thought Naruto might blow his balls from that, so she went in for another kill shot. "Son, robot mommy is your personal cunt." Kushina emphasized the word cunt loudly. "Get on your knees, mom. Right now." Naruto grunted through his gritting teeth as he withdrew from his mother's smoldering. He immediately gripped his with his right hand so that he wouldn't shoot all over the place. Kushina quickly got on her knees, grabbed her big wet from the sides and hoisted them toward him. Naruto bent low and feed his purple-headed from the bottom of Kushina's cleavage. He pushed up and began her large mommy jugs hard and fast. Naruto placed his hands on his mother's shoulders for balance as he shot his hips back and forth. Within seconds, Naruto started shooting jet after jet of thick strands of cum. Kushina melted as she looked up and saw a perfect specimen of a man before her. She loved how Naruto's entire body tensed up as he orgasmed. She looked down at the top of her cleavage and gasped at all the cum that was on her. Jesus mom, exhale, I really needed that. The robot slave thing was so hot, Naruto said while stepping out of the shower. Kushina jumped to her feet quickly and looked out the window. She saw Minato lounging on the beach chair, catching some rays. The water from the shower quickly washed the ribbons of cum off her perfect tits. You really know what to say. Kushina leaned into her son and aggressively began kissing him hard. She grabbed him and slammed him against the wall as she continued shoving her tongue down her son's throat. Naruto quickly caught up with his mother and held her close. Kushina purred as she ran her smooth right-left leg up and down the inner parts of Naruto's upper thigh. She placed her palms on Naruto's chiseled chest and slowed down her kissing. The next morning, Minato was in the bedroom closet frantically looking for his dress shoes and tie. He was already nervous because he had an important meeting at work. Kushina, do you know where my black striped necktie is? I can't find it anywhere, Minato yelled from upstairs. Kushina, who was on her stomach on the couch, looked to the love seat and saw Minato's necktie on the love seat. Naruto was sitting next to his mother rubbing her cute feet. Did you look in the guest bedroom closet? I'll be up in a second to help look. Kushina replied and went to get up. Naruto stopped her from getting up and flipped her on her stomach. Kushina giggled as Naruto pulled down her gray skin-tight yoga pants just underneath her. Kushina's yellow thong panties made Naruto's mouth water, but he knew they didn't have time to do anything. Kushina playfully swatted Naruto's hands away from her butt. Naruto grabbed Kushina's lipstick that was on the end table. She shook her meat yacht her son. Naruto held her still and began to spell out the word. On the left cheek and on the right cheek, he began writing, doll. Stop it. What are you writing? If you just wait a few minutes, we'll have plenty of time alone when your father leaves. Kushina whispered as she looked over her shoulder. After a few seconds, Kushina heard Minato coming downstairs. She quickly hoisted up her tight yoga pants over her ample bottom, walked over to the love seat, and grabbed Minato's necktie. Kushina met Minato at the bottom of the stairs and handed him the tie. Naruto quickly grabbed the throw blanket and placed it over his lap to hide his massive erection. I can't find. Oh, thanks babe, Minato said happily and kissed Kushina on the cheek. You're going to be late for work, hun, Kushina said as she walked back into the living room with her loving husband. Naruto quickly grabbed the throw blanket to cover his big blood-filled boner, obscenely tending his shorts. I know, I'll grab some breakfast on the way. Love you guys. Minato kissed his wife and quickly exited out the front door. About 20 minutes later, Minato arrived at work. As he parked, he wanted to remind Kushina that he was going to be home around 6 p.m. and that he had plans to celebrate their 19th anniversary. Minato picked up his phone and dialed Kushina's cell phone. Ring ring ring. Kushina was bouncing up and down hard on Naruto's lap as she heard her cell phone go off. Naruto was sitting on the couch as his big-bottomed mother slammed again and again onto his girthy pole. As soon as Minato left, Kushina ran into her room and shredded the gray yoga pants and her oversized cotton t-shirt. She reached into a large white box and pulled out a one-piece sexy cheerleading uniform. The front her tight long-sleeve sweater said the words Dartmouth arched across the chest. The green skirt draped halfway down her milky thighs. Ring ring ring. Kushina settled onto Naruto's as she reached over and picked up her phone that was vibrating next to them. It's your father already, Kushina said as she tried to compose herself and answered the phone. Naruto reached over and ran his hands along his mother's legs and hips as she tried to catch her breath. Hey babe, did you forget something? Kushina said as she began running her hands through Naruto's sunny blonde hair. This caused Naruto's to twitch hard. Kushina shook her bottom half to tease her son as he was bottoming out in her warm cunt. Hey, I forget to tell you that I made reservation for us at Giovanni's tonight, Minato said while gathering his stuff out of the trunk. Okay, that's great sweetie, Kushina replied while tracing her fingers along her son's lips. I still can't believe it will be 19 years tomorrow, Minato confessed. I know, Kushina said half paying attention. Is Naruto getting ready for his first day of classes? Naruto leaned forward and buried his face into his mother's neck and began sucking away. This causes Kushina's spine to shiver a bit. She resumed bouncing on Brad's while she pressed the phone to her ear. Yes, he is. He is showering right now. Kushina felt herself on the verge of creaming hard. You okay? Minato asked. Yeah, just had to pick up something. Kushina looked down into Naruto's eyes. You know how those young boys can get. We must keep him focused in school. If he is going to live at home, we need to come up with some rules. My thoughts exactly. Kushina accidentally screamed out loud. Kushina, sorry, my back. I think I pulled a muscle. Kushina said quickly as she bounced on Naruto's. The pom-poms that rested next to Naruto were shaking along with the couch. Let me call you back later. I have to help Naruto get ready for his first day. Kushina's voice trembled as she tried to get Minato off the phone. Don't baby him too much. He's a man now. Let him, Minato replied. Okay honey, I'll see you later then. You're starting to break up. Call me later. Kushina cut off her husband, hung up, and tossed the phone to the other side of the couch. She immediately started Naruto's steal extremely fast. MOMMMYYS coming already YYYY. Sheet. Kushina screamed as her hips whipped back and forth. The power of her caused the couch to repeatedly slam against the wall. Naruto sat there as Kushina the shit out of him. Minato heard silence and looked at his phone. His phone said call ended. Mom, you were really loud with that one. Wow, I think my ears popped on that one baby. Look, I am still shaking. Kushina exhaled and laughed just before she leaned in and French kissed her beautiful son. So I take it you like the outfit. Today is a big day. What time do you have to be at the campus? Not until noon, Naruto replied as he stared in awe of his mother in the cute cheerleading get-up sitting on his lap. Good, that gives us a few hours to play. Would you like your cheerleading mommy to come to practice and cheer you on? Kushina said playfully as she got off Naruto's large hard-on. I don't think that would be a good idea. Naruto smiled confidently. No, why not? Kushina reached over to the set of pom-poms. You wouldn't want your mom cheering you on from the bleachers? Kushina asked while twirling and jumping around in front of her favorite and only son. I would personally love it, but I don't think I would be able to get much accomplished. Plus, I am sure everyone on the team would want to take turns. Quote. Take turns. You mean like take turns trying Tome? Kushina said innocently. I remember Kiba used to always talk shit and be annoying about wanting to you. Naruto said. Kiba is all talk. He couldn't handle a real woman like my big son can. Kushina said as she walked over to the downstairs bathroom. Exactly. A few others used to tease me and talk about gangbanging you on the baseball field. One day you came to one of our practices and you had on a really tight pair of jeans shorts. Naruto explained. Quote. Oh, you like my short shorts? Kushina yelled from the bathroom. And you had on that plain shirt also. Oh, and you had your hair in a ponytail and the hair going out the back of the baseball hat you had on. You looked incredible. Even I wanted to you right there on the bleachers. Naruto confessed. You don't get mad at them when they say things like that about me. I want to kick their stupid faces in, but it really just makes me appreciate you more. I had a dream once that all the guys from the team were trying desperately to hit on you, but you turn them down one by one. You tell them that you only belong to me. Kushina walked slowly back out into the living room. Her legs and feet were totally drenched in baby oil. While in the bathroom, Kushina applied a substantial amount of oil to the lower half of her body, including her and hips. Naruto stopped and stared as his mother with animal lust while fisting his erect. What next, baby? Are you saying you'd take your poor old mommy behind the bleachers, flip up my skirt, and use my bubble butt for a quickie before a game? Kushina playfully said while shifting her weight onto her right leg and put her hands on her hips. Naruto grabbed her pom-poms, jumped off the couch, and ran over to his mother. Kushina laughed and quickly ran upstairs. Naruto chased after her with his heart bouncing and bobbing everywhere. Kushina's skirt jumped around and flashed Naruto hair and beautiful milky legs as he chased her up the stairs. Naruto shook Kushina's small pom-poms at her backside and under her skirt as he caught up to her. She ran into the master bedroom, jumped onto her back. The strapping young 18-year-old mounted his playful mommy and spent the next 5 minutes pounding Kushina's perfect body as hard as he could. The naughty mother, dressed in her Dartmouth cheerleading outfit, often forgot how her son has developed the strength and stamina to extremely hard and fast. To add to the lust, Kushina knew the right trigger words to add to the situation. Oh baby, me fast. Pretend that we are behind the bleachers at school. Kushina said while reaching for her oil-soaked legs to spread them further. I have to get back to the game. Coach is about to put me in. Naruto whispered into Kushina's ear while her quickly. Call me mom baby. Remember, it's much nastier to call me mommy when you're pounding the living shit out of me. Kushina gasped and clawed at Naruto's shoulders and back. I love you mom. You're the greatest. Naruto grunted and he reached underneath Kushina's sweater to feel her braless tits. You texted me earlier about needing to get your daily release before you start the game. Got here as fast as I could Pookie. Kushina screamed as a mini orgasm snuck up on her. She forced Naruto's mouth onto hers and she whined loudly. Her eyes were shut tight as she felt every nerve ending in her body contract and explode. Naruto then went back to Kushina's earlobe and sucked hard on it while clawing at her body. Thanks for coming and helping me mom. You always make things better. I don't know what I would do without you. Mai was busting through my cup. Naruto whispered. That's why I am here. Mommy drove all the way here to cheer her baby boy on and to make sure you're not distracted. By your sudden perverted urges. Kushina moaned loudly. The scenario they were playing out was making her extremely hot as Naruto suddenly felt his balls twitch. The lewd wet slapping sounds of oil, pre-cum, and juice filled the room. I was so glad to see you cheering from the sidelines. Then I saw you flashing your perfect legs and pretty white panties at me. I couldn't wait to your. Naruto's voice began to tremble as Kushina cut him off and went in for the kill. My what baby, cunt, my twat. Is that what you needed? I guess if you're just a walking hard-on, wouldn't you say your mother is just a walking creamy tight cunt honey? Say it. Jesus Christ, I'm coming hard. Call me a dirty names and blow your load in me. I'm a horny cunt. Blow your load Naruto. Hurry baby, I can hear your coach calling for you to get back into game. Blow you balls. I want to you blast my insides honey. Kushina egged on her loving son in a lust-filled rage. You're a perfect cunt mom. Naruto bore down and his body went to overdrive. The large bed shook as if there was a devastating earthquake happening. Kushina's eyes shot wide as she felt Naruto's hard shoot what seemed like a gallon of semen into her welcoming. Do it. Get your cheerleader mommy pregnant ttttttt. Paint my uterus with your pasty sperm you nasty boy. Kushina yelled as she was on the verge of passing out. Naruto's heavy load triggered wave after wave of orgasmic bliss inside his beautiful mother. He rolled off her and the both stared at the ceiling. Trying to catch their breath, both mother and son had a large satisfying smile on their faces. My god Naruto, I still can't believe what comes out of me when I am with you. Kushina said she reached down and played with her while her son's cum slowly oozed out. Naruto looked over at his motionless smiling mother. The green cheerleader skirt was still hiked up just above her sexy waist. The baby oil that was on her legs made them shine. Suddenly Naruto's wet slightly twitched in response to the sight next to him. Immediately, Kushina's strong healthy boy started fisting his once again. Still in a post-orgasmic fog, Kushina slowly turned onto her flat tummy. She looked at her son gawking at her bubble butt in the cheerleading skirt. When she shifted, the skirt settled about halfway down her meaty bottom. Kushina looked down over her shoulder and then back over to her son. What am I going to do with you? Kushina smiled at her son. Fine Pookie. Go ahead. Kushina arched hair and hips into the air while keeping her chest and knees on the bed. Get that big boner off with mommy's juicy. Naruto lounged on top of his mother's soft backside. He rubbed his left hand all over her plump cheeks and hamstrings to spread the existing baby oil that was soaked in. He ran his slick hand between the deep canyon of his mother's perfect. He leaned forward and lined up his rock hard into its warm opening. Kushina purred as her son sawed his big meaty 9 inches into her well-lubricated hole. Later that night, Minato and Kushina celebrated their 20-year anniversary. Minato planned, what most would consider, a perfect evening for his wife. A stopover where Minato first met the love of his life, reservation at their favorite steakhouse, and expensive jewelry. However, the 39-year-old mother of one could not help but recall being completely ravished by her son earlier in the day. Hello, Kushina, you okay? Minato said trying to get his wife's attention. Kushina woke up from her daze. Sorry honey, I was just thinking that I might want to go back into modeling. Did you say you need to go away during Christmas? Kushina replied. As Minato continued to tell her about his business trip coming up in the winter, Kushina started to doze off again. This time she maintained eye contact and acted interested. Visions of Naruto pounding her body in the cheerleading outfit in front of her bedroom mirror popped in her head. Looking at her son in the large mirror as he savagely rammed his up her tight, she almost giggled out loud when she remembered breaking the old wooden chair at her vanity. Her son was sitting down and Kushina bounced up and down extremely hard on his rigid pole. Naruto used a pair of scissors on the hutch to cut open the front of Kushina's uniform so that her sensual Jane-type tits spilled out. "What would you like to drink, ma'am?" the red-headed waitress asked while holding a pen and pad of paper. Kushina wanted to blurt out, "Everything in my son's balls," but she thought better of it. After the waitress left with their order, Kushina discreetly touched her panties underneath her black dress and her spine shivered once she felt crusty residue of her son. Earlier in the evening, before leaving with her husband for dinner, Kushina ran into Naruto wearing a long-sleeve black sweater dress. Her makeup and hair was done up perfectly. "Oh wow, Mom, you look stunning," Naruto said sitting upright in his bed. "Get up, honey. Beat off in my panties," Kushina said in a low voice, making sure she wasn't too loud. Naruto looked at her confused as she handed him a pair of black satin underwear. Then she quickly turned around and hiked up her black dress. "Look at my butt while you do it. Hurry, your father is waiting for me downstairs." "Are you serious? But what if?" Naruto started to say but quickly stopped talking as Kushina finished placing her skirt over her hips. He immediately got weak, grabbed his growing with the panties, and instinctively dove onto his knees. He pressed his face against his mother's warm butt cheeks. It took Naruto less than 3 minutes to successfully rub himself to orgasm. Sensing Naruto was about to pop, Kushina reached around, roughly grabbed her son by the hair, and smashed his face into her sweet crack. Come right now for your mother. Right now," Kushina whispered sternly. Naruto roared into his mother's perfectly plump hand exploded with the thin material over his. Kushina grabbed the ruined pair of panties out of Naruto's hands and quickly put them on. There wasn't a lot of jizz, but it was the dirty idea of her son's cum in her underwear while she was out to dinner with her husband that got her off. As Minato and Kushina left the restaurant hand in hand, Kushina mentioned going back home and watching a movie to end the night. Minato loved the idea and suggested picking up ice cream on their way home. After about 30 minutes into romantic comedy, Kushina had looked over to Minato and noticed he was sound asleep. She looked at her loving husband and then she glanced over to the stairs at the end of the living that lead upstairs. A mischievous smile covered Kushina's face as she wondered if her loving son was still awake.